Well, good evening, everyone. I'm Jacob Bradford. Thank you for joining us tonight for KRBC's 10 at 10. It's where you get your top stories and tomorrow's forecast all in the first 10 minutes. Well, our top story tonight, let's go ahead and toss it over to our weather trooper, Taylor Grenda, who hasn't had a day off in nearly 2 weeks. Taylor, how's the weather looking? Well, hundreds of students learned a lesson about the real world today during a career fair at Cooper High School. Now, the job fair focused on technological advancements affecting job opportunity. And the official start to winter may be still 2 weeks away, but Mother Nature doesn't seem to be waiting. And dangerous and now deadly storm is blanketing much of the country right now, and there could be more snow and ice on the way. Jay Gray has details tonight from one of the hardest hit areas, Little Rock, Arkansas.
Sees Jacob Bradford live outside the KRBC studio. Jacob, do cars seem to be struggling out there?
Hey, Megan and Randy. No, the cars don't seem to be struggling, but as you can see, the little cars that are here comes a little Ford Focus. They're not struggling, but they have definitely slowed down. Just a few minutes ago, an ambulance took the corner right here at Pioneer and South 14th Street, a little bit slower than normal. Now, take a look over here at this car. Now, this is one of our co-workers' cars, and this is all the sleet that has accumulated over the day. Now, that's not snow, that's all sleet. And this is what you guys are dealing with on the roads. Just to make and reiterate that you all need to be careful out here, it's slick. Take a look at that. It's just absolute ice, iced all over.
An Abilene woman is set to stand trial on federal charges after she's accused of embezzling over $1 million from a local company. All right, everybody, be safe out there. That's it for the news at 10. Thank you for trusting KRBC. We'll see you right back here tomorrow. And remember that news is always online at bigcountryhomepage.com.
Have a good night and stay safe.
And now I-20 is now reopened after being shut down for a while in Mitchell County. Accidents led the Texas Department of Transportation to shut down the interstate from mile marker 226 to 228. Crews worked to clear those accidents off of the main lanes. Driving is highly discouraged at this time. Megan and Randy, that 22-year-old man is Tio Bustamante, and last month he was pepper sprayed by Merkel police. Now questions are surrounding the incident, such as why he was sprayed, why recording equipment wasn't used, and why a form of communication wasn't used to try to break the barrier between Officer Sid Reyes and Bustamante.
Because I told Officer Sid, I said, hey, that guy didn't do nothing to you for you to be like that with him, for you to mace him. And he told me, shut the hell up, kid in my house. It wasn't none of my business.
Bobby Killo is speaking of his neighbor, 22-year-old Teodulu Bustamante, who goes by the name Tio. He's also deaf. On October 4th of this year, the quiet, small town of Merkel was anything but quiet. Cell phone video shot by a neighbor captures the aftermath. After 9 p.m., Tio was taking out his trash. He tells me he had a few beers but was on his own property when Officer Sid Reyes showed up.
They were doing a routine check, I guess, and so I'm walking. They thought there was something amiss.
Officer Reyes' report states that Tio was intoxicated, hitting his trash bags against a neighbor's car who had called police. Reyes confronted Tio and, according to the report, attempted to talk to Tio by using sign language, which Tio Bustamante says didn't happen.
Said, what are you doing, and so on, and I said, I'm deaf, I can't communicate in English. And so I signed to him, please, we can take notes if you need to communicate with me.
He was telling the officer like this, you know, write it down, I can't hear you.
Okay.
And then he went like that, and Officer Sid pulled out his mace and sprayed him. And when he fell on the ground, he put his handcuff on him and, you know, he's holding him up, being real rough with him.
Immediately, without any provocation, really took out his spray and sprayed me in the face.
We asked Merkel Police Chief Bill Wheat to sit down on camera and talk with us about this incident. He declined. So we went ahead and asked the city manager, Steve Campbell. He too declined. But through a Freedom of Information request, KRBC News has learned that the city had also questions about Reyes' actions that night.
A memo dated October 14th from the city manager to Reyes' supervising sergeant questions the officer's actions, specifically Reyes' failure to obtain an identity of the subject, now known as Tio Bustamante. It challenges Reyes' claims that he explained Tio's arrest to his mom and dad when Bustamante's parents were not on the scene, and it calls Officer Reyes' claim of using sign language to communicate troubling, as the city is not aware of Officer Reyes having sign language knowledge.
That memo goes on to question why he didn't use notes to communicate with those at the scene. It also says him not turning on his patrol unit's recording devices inexcusable, as they would have been invaluable to this investigation.
The whole incident has left Tio and his family confused.
Court said they were going to just drop the case, and that was it. There was no that was all that they said.
Merkel police did conduct an internal investigation, and while it detailed many of Officer Reyes' shortcomings that night, In the end, Reyes was disciplined for two things: not turning on his video equipment and not notifying his sergeant that pepper spray had been used.
Now, there are a lot of other details surrounding this case that add to the confusion, like Reyes' report being barely legible. Chief Wheat told me through email that the first report was incomplete, which was the reason for the two different police reports. There was also some confusion at the Taylor County Jail when Tio arrived, since Reyes did not pass along the identity of his prisoner. They ended up getting his ID from a Taylor County deputy who was also at the scene.
All right, Jacob, so what's the status of Officer Reyes? Is he back at work?
He is back at work. He was originally suspended for 3 days, paid administrative leave, as Merkel PD conducted their own internal investigation, which resulted in a letter of reprimand. Police Chief Bill Wheat told me through email during the weekend that he believes that Officer Reyes did what was necessary in this incident.
All right. It's been 50 years since Parkland Hospital declared President John F. Kennedy dead. Over the years, the hospital has gone through many changes.
Tonight, KRBC's Jacob Bradford not only shows us what Parkland Hospital looks like right now, but also shares the story of two doctors who worked to save the life of America's 35th president.
They're approaching the entrance now to Parkland Hospital, traveling at a high rate of speed. Already police cars converging on Parkland from every angle, from every point.
This is Jacob Bradford at Parkland Hospital. That afternoon in 1963 was unlike any other. Americans standing outside the emergency room, worried about their leader. Today, Parkland Hospital is much larger than it was 50 years ago, but the focus of those who work here hasn't changed at all. However, their tools have changed greatly, and that helps modern trauma teams treat every patient
like they're the President of the United States.
Today, the trauma room where President Kennedy was treated is marked with this plaque, and this space is now a waiting room. Although 50 years have passed since the traumatic events of that day, the legends of the doctors and nurses who were there to save the president's life still roam the hallways of Parkland Memorial Hospital.
Every day that we put on our scrubs and put on our boots and come to work, knowing that we are going to be not only walking in the same halls, but carrying on the legacy of the surgeons who were here on that day.
Parkland Hospital has been advised to stand by for a severe gunshot wound.
For Dr. Jones and McClellan, those were the calls to action to save the Commander-in-Chief's life 50 years ago.
When I was in the cafeteria when they were paging physician stat, and that's when the operator told me that the president had been shot and they were bringing him to the emergency room. They needed physicians, and we went down there, Dr. Perry and I did, and saw him motionless on the table with a small wound in the front of his neck and an undetermined amount of wound in the back of the head.
I was standing at the head of the stretcher that he was lying on, and of course blood was pouring from his head. And I had on just a suit like this because I didn't have time to change into, surgical scrubs. And so my entire suit was soaked in blood.
And as I've often said, that gives you an adrenaline flush and rush, and you just think, and then you immediately say, okay, we've got to do something here.
In downtown Dallas, a priest has been ordered, emergency supplies of blood also being rushed to the hospital. The President of the United States is dead.